Good afternoon and hello. It is Monday, March 4th, 2019 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Admissions Live. I am your host, Kristen Gowan, Director of Digital Strategy here at Union College, and on today's live broadcast, we're talking about ways to harness user-generated content with Instagram Stories. With Instagram Stories updating almost weekly, there are many new opportunities to reach prospective students and get out our important messages about why high school students should fall in love with and apply to our institutions. So today we're going to share some ideas around capturing user-generated content on Instagram Stories and how to use that to your advantage in your overall digital marketing strategies. Before we get to all of that, I have a few shout outs to the folks who make Higher Ed Live possible. Admissions Live is part of the Higher Ed Network. All of our episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Be a part of our live broadcast by sharing your knowledge and participate in today's discussion by tweeting us using the hashtag HigherEdLive. I'll share your questions and comments with our panelists who I'm sure will be happy to discuss. All of our episodes are free and easy to access in the video archives at higheredlive.com, or take Higher Ed Live with you on the go by subscribing to the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a digital-first agency committed to tailored solutions that drive real results. And today's episode is sponsored by Robert Metalliano, a freelance development writer with broad experience in higher education. You can meet Robert at the Case D2 conference in Philly at the end of March, or visit robertmetalliano.com. And now let me introduce our guests who are just down the New York State Thruway from me in sunny upstate New York today from the Rochester Institute of Technology. We have Dave Tyler, Social Media Director. He's been working in higher education for a decade, and at RIT he directs social content and strategy across the university's platforms. Before coming to RIT, he worked at the College of Rockport in a similar role, and he's also worked in public relations as a newspaper reporter, and he still considers himself a recovering journalist. Aren't we all? Dave also serves as publisher of Link, an online journal published by High Ed Web. Tori Bragg is a social media specialist at RIT and freelance user experience designer. At RIT, she works as a content creator for social media, creating infographics, visual stories, and animations to display information for Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, and Twitter. Graduating from RIT in May, Tori will have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in New Media Design and a minor in Game Design. So welcome, Dave and Tori. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So also to our guests watching online, don't hesitate to ask questions using the hashtag HigherEdLive, and I'll do my best to ask your questions as they come in. But first, I'll start with a few questions of my own. Dave, so we know that everything seems to always be evolving in social media, new platforms popping up, new apps popping up all the time. Instagram Stories has kind of been rising in popularity in the last 4 years, and I'd love to hear about how when RIT decided to really grab on and jump on board and make it part of your digital marketing strategy.
Sure. I'll start with just a little bit of background. I've been at RIT here since May of 2017. And quite honestly, before I got here, I'm actually the first person to hold this job title at RIT. So there was a lot of work to do in terms of getting accounts coordinated and off the ground again. And we really wanted to focus on trying to engage more with our Instagram audience. We're a very photojournalism focused school. We've had alums win 13 Pulitzer Prizes for photography. So we really knew that we had to kind of step up our game on Instagram to be worthy of that sort of heritage. And when I got here, we wanted to look for ways to engage with our audience and also kind of delight them. And Instagram Stories was really kind of just evolving at that point in time. We had decided to start focusing on Snapchat, but as we saw more features rolling out in Instagram, we really started to focus there too. One of the other reasons we were looking at Instagram as a way to engage with our audiences is we were noticing, quite honestly, the engagement rates going down on other platforms. You know, the organic reach on Facebook was dropping off a cliff. So we wanted to find new ways to get our stories out to a wider audience. And that really was the jumping off point for us, quite honestly, was how do we take some of the things that are being written by our PR staff here about the great stories that are coming out of RIT, and how do we get them seen by more people? So we were really looking at Instagram first and foremost as a way to drive more traffic to our website in a different way possible, and in a cost-effective way.
Yeah, that's great. I've been really surprised at how much engagement we've actually seen here at Union on Instagram stories. Like, the views on stories are much higher than anything now on Facebook that we could see anywhere there too. So Tori, as a designer, when it comes to content, what are you seeing as working best in terms of engagement when you're planning different types of content, and how are you soliciting to get user-generated content altogether?
Well, generally so far what we've seen that works the best is more like the stories that prompt responses from students or kind of involve students that are currently on campus. So if we like post, we do question of the week each week, which is when we go around campus and we ask students a question and we gather their responses and have a picture or a video of them. And a lot of other students are just happy and excited. They'll be like, oh, hey, look, my friend's in there. And then at the end, we post, we use Instagram's question feature and ask people what responses they have, and then we share a bunch of them. And overall, like throughout it, like from when we started to now, we've gotten a lot more responses on each and a lot more info to share, and it seems to be working like really well so far.
Yeah, have you guys done Instagram takeovers and that kind of thing, giving the keys over to the entire stories account, or how do you feel about that?
Not quite yet. That's something that's on our agenda to do. We've handed the account over to various departments and offices when they've had some things going on, but we haven't completely handed things over to students just yet. And one reason for that is quite honestly, we're still getting a lot of traffic and engagement this way. One of the things we noticed when we started running Question of the Week here was we originally, and this was actually, it predates the question feature, I think, on Instagram stories, was people were reaching out to us via message to provide us with their own answers to the question. And I don't know that that was something we quite expected. We kind of originally envisioned it as a person on the street kind of feature where we just, the people who answered the question were our participants, but the audience, started to participate for us without our prodding them. So once the question feature became available, it was kind of a natural outgrowth to let the audience latch onto that, and it's really sort of mushroomed from there. So we're probably getting between 15 and 20 responses a week now when we do Question of the Week.
What are some of the questions that you guys have asked people that have been popular?
Well, let's see. We've done everything from where's your favorite place to study to where's an underrated spot on campus, and last week we did where's your favorite place to nap, because it was National Nap Week, and that did pretty well. And one of the things we try to focus on with the question is to keep in mind that hopefully somebody who has no connection to RIT just yet, or wants to be connected as a prospective student, are going to see these questions and interact with them and use them as a way to learn more about RIT. Certainly the Question of the Week is popular amongst the current students, but we're always phrasing the questions with an eye towards that prospective student who might just be discovering RIT on Instagram.
One of the most popular questions was actually what their favorite clubs and organizations were, because everyone loves talking about the clubs and organizations they like. And that way they wanted to like spread the word and gather more members as well.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about student-led clubs is they're their own best advocates. So using something like that would be a great channel to get your message out. I'm always interested in talking about when we're thinking about different channels like this that tend to be more casual, you know, people are sending you direct messages and things like that. How do you decide about a tone? Like what type of tone do you want to take on Instagram stories? Do you want to be super cool and everybody's friend, or is it very much we are from the, this is an account from the institution? Like, how do you decide where you are on that scale?
I don't know. I think we kind of feel our way through that a lot. It's definitely, we definitely tend to be more casual on Instagram than we would on Facebook, for example. But we also do recognize that we have to have a tone of authority when we're talking with people, because you know, there are serious questions that come into the account. So we may be splitting hairs a little bit, but we try to walk a pretty fine line. You know, we will have fun out there for sure. Such as the nap question last week was, you know, was a little irreverent for us, but we definitely want to make sure that we still maintain an image of authority as well on Instagram. So it's a fine line, and I don't know that there's any hard and fast rule that we have. We kind of feel our way through it a lot.
Nice. So you mentioned to me previously this idea of programming on Instagram stories and having distinctive areas that you try to target. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. I'll start, and I'll let Tori hop in here too. When we first started using Instagram stories, I mentioned the idea of using our news related stories. So we have a category of posts that if you go look at our highlights, you'll see things that are very focused on specific press releases or news releases that have come out of RIT. And so you'll see stories about astronomy professors working on new projects and new research. You'll see stories about rocketry club doing really well. And those are things that are very specific, where we're trying to drive traffic to those stories on the website. And those have worked pretty well. You see a fair bump in reads on those stories when you look at the Google Analytics. Mm-hmm. The second thing we've tried to do is be consistent about giving people a reason to come back to us each and every day. So we've latched onto the idea of having programmatic features that appear on a different day of the week. And sometimes we get a little overly alliterative with them, but Tori's helped us, you know, to flesh those out a little bit and design for them. So we have question of the week always appears on Thursday for us. Okay. We have a feature that Tori helps pilot for us called Working Wednesday, and I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Working Wednesday is kind of, we sent out a form and we gathered where people were going on co-op or where they were working. And then each Wednesday we feature them. So we have like a little intro slide, and then into like showing the person where they work, and then some info about like why they like to work there and what was their favorite part, and kind of showing that like what our students are doing.
And the great thing about that is we're soliciting feedback right there. We're encouraging people to apply on their own in the Instagram story. We're working on a feature that we'll hopefully launch here in a little while, where we're profiling our faculty in the same way, and that'll be Faculty Friday.
Oh, cool.
You know, and they seem to have worked very well because people have come to expect it, I think. You know, we've got a Google form for Working Wednesday that still gets about 1 to 2 inquiries a week from students who are out on an internship or a co-op now and want to, you know, show off the cool work that they're doing. And again, that's the kind of thing that gets driven home to a prospective student. Mm-hmm. That says, hey, this could be me if I come to RIT. I could be working at Tesla or Google or Facebook.
We've had a lot of good success with the questions feature, especially here, because actually one quick example here at Union, we had application deadline obviously in January, and 2 days before on a Sunday afternoon, I just posted, what is one reason that a student should submit their application today to Union? And we received over 150 responses. Like literally, I couldn't keep up with how much we posted, as faculty members, know your name and take a, it's small and personal connections. The things that we're thinking about here as marketing points and talking points are being sent right back to us. And so we know, okay, our messages are getting through. But then also it was great to see all the different stories of, I was over prepared for law school, things like that we definitely want to hear. So it's great when you're getting that user generated content and seeing the interaction, and people, like you said, are still wanting to be a part of your features, and having standing content like that is great.
Right. It's you're essentially conducting a focus group in real time, constantly, as you get feedback. So it's great to hear stories like that, and I think you'll find that the more you do it, the more people expect to be able to use the feature to communicate with you. So it reinforces itself.
Also, when you're managing the accounts, I'm sure you've learned it's definitely not a 9 to 5 thing. Then when people want to communicate with you on Saturday night or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, of course, I'll answer. Send you a message or whatever. So
absolutely,
never stop on social media.
It never stops, and you do try to manage to keep yourself sane. So it helps to have a team working with you, whether you're a shop of one or you have people working with you. It's always a good idea to look for people in your own office who can help you shoulder some of that burden as well.
And for the folks who are watching at home, I just tweeted out a link to RIT's Instagram, so you can take a look at some of their standing features as well and see what they're doing and follow along with them. We also want to talk a little bit kind of about how, we hear all the time in influencer marketing that Instagrams must have a look and feel, like you see all the digital, well-followed influencers, and their feed has that look and feel. I'd love to hear from you, Tori, kind of about how do you create a look and feel in Instagram stories too?
Okay. So I kind of started here before the rebranding really was out. So it's kind of been an ever evolving kind of situation. And a lot of look and feel is taken from branding guidelines. So fonts and how I use certain things. But at the same time, it wanted to be more not as quite, because it's more casual, a friendlier open feel. So going through certain illustrations, they're not ones that the campus always uses, but they're ones that make you feel more welcome and kind of tell the activities of the campus and whatnot. And through different stories. So our news stories all have a similar kind of, here's what it's about, and little snippets we get to. But then if you go to Working Wednesday and Question of the Week, they have a starting slide that's more fun and open looking, and then goes into different colors, and not within all the branding standards, but still adhering to it somewhat.
So how do you keep it, I guess, the look and feel more fun and kind of match the casualness of Instagram, rather than kind of, something that's more traditional, like a publication or something? How do you kind of walk that line? We talked a little bit about tone, but visually, are you kind of always evolving that to be more modern and current?
Yeah, because throughout it, before we had a different font, so I swapped over all the fonts on everything, so those were the same, and kind of how it's aligned, and the different branding aspects from RIT, the box they have now, and brackets and whatnot, and how you arrange the writing. So that kind of moved over from the institution, but at the same time, the colors are a little more paled out a little bit, so it's just not as bright and stark as a contrast, and the illustrations are more rounded and open and welcoming.
Yeah. I would say also there's a little more playful nature to the colors that we use a little bit, and Tori's really great at finding iconography that fits with what we're talking about. So it's subtle, but if you look at it, there'll be a question mark placed somewhere in the background as an icon, or a watch, or you name it, and it kind of helps things pop a little bit. It's one of the things I really like about what she's done for us.
Very cool. And getting great hands-on experience as well, even while you're a student at RIT. That's amazing. So I'd love to hear what advice you guys would give and kind of lessons that you've learned really going to more cohesive Instagram story strategy, and kind of what you would tell an institution that's looking to get that strategy in place?
Well, I think it helps to have your audience expect you to be there. So if you're going to embrace Instagram stories, make sure you're doing it on a regular basis. It's one thing to kind of cover news, use the story feature to cover news events on your campus, like live announcements or things like that. But it's another to give your audience a reason to come back to that space over and over again. So, that's why we've chosen the programming approach. So we know, and our audience knows, that they're going to see something in our story space on a regular basis. So I would definitely say, make sure you're programming so that you're giving your audience a reason to come back, and building an expectation with them. It's in that way, it's not all that much different than, dropping a podcast on a regular basis. You want to give people that expectation. And I'd also say, make sure you're using that highlights feature to keep your content there, so that you can remind people of what they're doing. I've seen lots of different people use different ways of organizing a space into content areas or different topics that they want to explore, but definitely take advantage of that, so that you give people a reason to stop on your profile and scroll for a little bit.
Do you guys use any particular tools to help you with scheduling? Because I know sometimes Instagram stories can be a little daunting with the scheduling aspect of it, especially if you have a lot of stories in one section. Do you guys use any tools or vendors for that?
We use Iconosquare, but mostly for monitoring, not for scheduling at this point. However, we use Salesforce's Social Studio overall for our social platforms. And while you cannot publish to Instagram stories just yet, we certainly use the notes feature there to remind us to get our content out, and then go into the native app to publish. One nice thing about Social Studio right now is they're starting to bring in stories analytics. So once you do publish in the native app, you can take a look at how your stories are performing, and know what's working and what might not be working so well.
Cool. And we have a tweet from Kelly Bennett at Miami University saying they did something really similar to what I had done at Union. They did a Why Miami Instagram story as a final push for their apps as well. And over 100 responses, extremely authentic, and a fun way for current students and alumni to engage with the content.
Very
cool. What we've learned is that everybody should at least be doing the why should you come to this college/university type final push in apps. It seems like it really resonates with alumni, but then also gives you some really good authentic marketing as well to help with your final push. So I have been seeing that you guys do these awesome fill in the blank Q&As on Instagram, and I really love those. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like those are starting to get really hot kind of in like overall Insta world, and now it's coming to higher ed. Can you talk about how you started doing those and what exactly those are?
Well, you caught us because that was actually our first one.
Oh, cool. Well, it's really cool.
But that was exactly that goes into our sort of fun bucket for ideas for Instagram. And we, my colleague Jess actually suggested it because, she'd been seeing them on various Instagrams outside of higher ed, and we figured we'd give it a try here. It's definitely something we want to do more of. And it's also an example of Tori using our branding look and feel to adapt something into the RIT brand, but to take a fun idea and give it a little RIT flavor. That worked out really well for us too. We got a couple dozen responses as we left that up over there, and people really seem to embrace it. So we're going to try it again. We just have to figure out different topic areas for it, I think.
This one was more focused towards midterms, since it's around now. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it could adapt really well to different times of year, like whenever you're doing different things, or, you know, spring, when spring finally, you know, comes to upstate New York. I'm sure there's a fun Q&A you could do with that as well. So.
Exactly. And it helps to have a something to hang your hat on, I guess, too. It is fine to do things just for the sake of doing them, but when you can tie them into a brand goal or you know, campus happening, you know, all the better. It gives it that much more resonance with your audience.
So I'm always curious to hear from people about, it sounds like you guys have great buy-in with communications and social media at your institution, but what would you say to folks who, you know, are probably getting a response back like, oh, Instagram stories, like, what is that? They don't even know, you know, leadership may not even know how to watch a story or anything. Kind of how do you substantiate it and show that this has real value and definitely should be part of a strategy?
Well, you know, you can throw out all the statistics about how much Instagram is getting used, and it's you know, it's hard to argue with a platform that can claim, what is it now, close to 1 billion monthly users. You know, if that doesn't open your eyes on your own, you know, prove it to your powers that be with your own stats. You know, I think one of the better things about Instagram's ownership from Facebook is that you're getting good stats now about how your stories are being viewed. And really, when you go in and look at our traffic, the per slide views that we're getting and impressions that we're getting are just on a steep upward trajectory. You know, every time we do one of these, we're getting more and more views. So you compare and contrast with your other platforms, and I think your bosses will be suitably impressed.
Yeah, I think user-generated content has been such a huge boost to us here as well. Those days where we have had some student takeovers here and we've had good success with those, and especially certain students on campus will go up in 50, 60 followers in that day. You know, if we can even capture more current students getting on our account so that they can see that they can interact with us on Instagram, it's great to have that interaction with.
Right. You know, and when you're getting that interaction, you're creating fans that recur. You know, they're not just coming to your platform once and then leaving. They're becoming dedicated followers. You know, we're averaging anywhere between 180 and 250,000 impressions on Facebook a week.
Wow.
These days, and that's because we're getting repeat customers.
Very cool. So kind of looking to the future and kind of what you guys are thinking about for the future when it comes to Instagram stories, what are some of the things that you'd love to tackle this year or looking into next year? What are some things that you think would be great to add to RIT Tigers?
Great to add to RIT Tigers. Oh, I think we want to use a few more GIFs in our posts. You know, Tori's been great about creating a few stickers for us that you can search for and use. I think we'd like to add to that roster to give things a little bit more of a fun flair. I think we'd like to explore Instagram TV a little bit more too. We're fortunate to have some powerhouse video folks on our team here at RIT, and I'd like to see how we can really bring that into the fold. You think, am I missing anything here?
I think you got most of it, other than maybe having more days of the week in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately we'd like to get programmed out to the point where we're 5 days a week with what we've got, and we're headed towards there. We've got some ideas about where that'll take us.
Very cool. So we don't seem to have any other questions from Twitter or anything. Do you guys have any kind of final thoughts on Instagram stories, things that you want to give a shout out to about there at RIT or other institutions you think are doing a really good job? Anything else?
Well, I think I want to make sure I give another former student a shout out here who really helped carry the ball for us when we started Question of the Week. Liz Vosberg, who worked for us for a couple of semesters, did a great job in being our roving reporter to get Question of the Week answers. And, you know, that's another helpful avenue too, is it's great to have awesome students who are willing to go out and you know, talk to people randomly on campus to get this kind of thing started, even when your target audience may be a little shy at first. So Liz was really a helping, and Tori were driving forces in helping us get this off the ground. And yeah, I guess just it would encourage people, if they haven't taken advantage of the stories feature just yet, to make sure they're doing it. And you'll see the returns pretty readily. You know, you were saying, I will say one other thing we've tended to model things off of a little bit is watch what media companies are doing with Instagram stories, and maybe kind of a surprising avenue for this is your traditional newspaper companies are actually doing an amazing job with Instagram stories. Particularly the Washington Post and the New York Times. They have been an inspiration to us as we do some things on Instagram stories. USA Today has done a nice job too, some of these things. So, you know, I'm a big believer in trying to consume as much as you can. So if you're looking for ideas, look in different places, not just higher ed too.
Yeah, that seems to be with a lot of the projects that we're doing here now more than ever. Instead of just looking at kind of what our competitors and what our peer schools or peer institutions are doing, we're looking a lot more to commercial work, editorial work. You know, what is everybody doing that's just the best? It doesn't matter what industry, that we can model ourselves after as well. So very cool.
Absolutely.
And I would say, as well as Instagram stories, like don't forget actual Instagram posts as well, just like regular photo posting too.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, you know, it's like, it's almost sometimes two completely different apps. Like, I think, you know, you can be, you know, on the feed, we're always professional photography and really great moments and things like that. And Instagram stories is not as much. It's in the moment, very quick and very immediate. So it's like working two different parts of your social media brain there. So
yeah. That's a great point, and a really good way to think of it, because your one is very immediate and one kind of has more of a lasting impact, but you can connect the two together too. I mean, that's one thing we try to do, is say, if we're posting something, check out our story, you know, and tying things together.
Very cool. Well, I really want to thank you guys, Dave and Tori, for a great conversation today. Also, thanks to our program sponsors, Robert Metalliano and M. Stoner. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.